Hello and welcome everyone! 2020 is shaping up to be an amazing year for video games. There are plenty of new IPs coming out, as well as new entries into old classic series, as well as a multitude of amazing looking remasters and remakes for classic games. Today I'll be talking about a few that I'm getting very excited for in the coming year. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's start with the new IPs and new entries into older series. First of all, I really want to talk about Zelda Breath of the Wild's sequel. We know very little outside of this opening trailer, but honestly, I'm really excited following the initial game. It looks like this is going to turn out to be a lot like a Majora's Mask-style sequel, and I'm looking forward to seeing a slightly darker atmosphere among all the other parts of the new game. What I think I'm looking forward to most about it is the fact that Princess Zelda seems like she'll be playing a more integral role in the actual unfurling of the story itself this go around. Though, there's not a lot I can really say in terms of my thoughts on it, as we don't know what the actual gameplay will look like yet, assuming it's not just going to be a complete reskin of the initial game with a new story. And even then, I wouldn't consider that to necessarily be a bad thing. Following that, we have Cyberpunk 2077, and I will be the first to admit, I don't really know what to think about this game going into it, but I am excited based on what we've seen from the trailers. The action, the story, the choices all look really interesting. The Keanu Reeves cameo looks really cool, and I know it will have something to do with the original tabletop game, though I will say that I personally have not ever played it before. I am still very interested in seeing where this will go and how it may tie into that. I still remember watching the original announcement trailer for this game back in 2013 and just being so hyped about it. I didn't have a great grasp of what the game was going to be like back then, but now that I've seen from the new trailers how it's going to play out, I am very excited to see how the final product comes out. I love cyberpunk games and media with a passion. Blade Runner, Valhalla, Ghost in the Shell, Alita Battle Angel, Cowboy Bebop. I just really want to see where this particular project is going to end up going in the long run. Next up we have Marvel's Avengers, and this is looking to be interesting to say the least. Graphically and gameplay-wise, it's very reminiscent of the PS4 Spider-Man game by Insomniac, but the playstyle looks like it's going to be very unique. You'll be able to go between a bunch of different heroes, whether or not that's based on particular sections of the game or story, or if you'll be able to swap between them at certain moments or only in certain sections, only time will tell. But it does appear that the characters you get to play as will have very unique play styles. I'm also very excited to see that a lot of characters that didn't seem to get a very big part in the MCU proper are going to be playing some role in this game, such as the Abomination with Hulk, or what appears to be Taskmaster, long before it was announced that he would be in the upcoming Black Widow film. While nothing is set in stone at this point, I have very high hopes that this game is going to turn out very well. Then we have Ghost of Tsushima. There's not much I can truly say about this game that isn't apparent from the existing trailers. You will be playing as a Japanese warrior, somewhat samurai, somewhat ninja. You'll do some sneaking, you'll do some killing, and you'll be going through one of what I'm hoping will be the best stories in the year to come. Sucker Punch have developed some of my favorite games on the PlayStation system, such as the first Infamous, Infamous Second Son, and the Sly Cooper series, and they have an amazing track record to back up my belief in this game. Long story short, I have big hopes for this game, not just on its own, but as the potential start of a new franchise. And hey, with games like this, Nioh, and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice on the market, we may even see the revival of some old ninja series such as, let's say, Tenchu, or maybe even a new series in Ninja Gaiden. Only time will tell. Let's step into something a little more casual now. The Animal Crossing series has spanned millions of homes in its casual but fun gameplay experiences, all the way since the original release on the GameCube in the US and 64 in Japan. That, City Folk, and New Leaf have all sold tons and tons of copies and have had thousands upon thousands of hours put into them by the player base at large. I will admit, it's not necessarily a game that was made for someone like me. While I do enjoy some, I won't necessarily say mindless, but more casual, simple games to relax every now and again, this is more so for people in a casual market, and I can understand that. My girlfriend is absolutely obsessed with the series and has been since the original game on GameCube. And she has been losing it, waiting for this game to come out in March, and I can completely understand why. I will say that I have an odd weakness for fishing and crafting games, so the new crafting elements do somewhat catch my interest, and I am interested to try it when our pre-order finally gets in. If nothing else, I am going to enjoy seeing the new shenanigans of Tom Nook, KK Slider, and the rest of the villagers that show up in this new entry. Next we'll be talking about a game coming out considerably sooner than a lot of the others on this list, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. It is very exciting to finally get a true action RPG based around the story of Dragon Ball Z from start to finish, including some chapters of some new stuff written by Toriyama himself. I am looking forward to seeing how the game itself plays, and as I mentioned in the previous entry, I am a huge fan of fishing minigames, training minigames, anything along those lines, and this game seems chocked to the brim with them. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the usual style over substance game that a lot of Dragon Ball Z games have kinda come to be known as over the past couple decades. Not to say there won't be a lot of style behind the substance. I am looking forward to seeing how it actually plays once I have it in my hands. Will it be similar to the Xenoverse games, or will it be a new, more unique system to the third-person action gameplay? Regardless, I have high hopes that this is going to be one of the better, if not one of the best anime games to come out this year. Before moving on to new entries and older, more classic series, I would like to go ahead and highlight a smaller game coming out this year that a lot of people probably haven't thought about, and that is the TOME, Terrain of Magical Expertise RPG that was funded on Kickstarter about 2 to 3 years ago. It is about 85% done with production as far as voicing, music, mechanics, animation, all are concerned, and we will very likely see it come out this coming year. Potentially sooner rather than later, though only time will tell. If you are a fan of the series, I would say this is a must-buy or a must-look into to potentially play or donate to. If you've never watched the Tome animated series on YouTube, I cannot recommend it enough. It is surprisingly well animated for its budget, and on top of everything else I could recommend with this and the upcoming game, all in-game animations were done by the creator of the web series, and they look fantastic so far. If you feel so obliged, please go watch the series and consider donating. A link to the Kickstarter page can be found in the description. While we're on the subject of Kickstarter games, I would also like to recommend that everyone go check out the page for Love, Money, and Rock and Roll by Soviet Games. Ever since playing their original visual novel Everlasting Summer on Steam back in 2014, I have fallen in love with this game studio's work, and I have been hooked on every bit of info I can find on the development of this new game since it was announced. There's not much I can say about it beyond the fact that there will be some dating elements, there will be some CG movement in the cutscenes and the character models, and that the music is going to be fantastic. But I assure you, this is a project worth backing, and I just wish that Soviet Games had the support that I personally feel they deserve. If you have the money and you are willing to do so, please support this game. You can find a link to the Indiegogo page below. And if you haven't played their original visual novel, Everlasting Summer, it's free on Steam, and I cannot recommend it enough. Not to spoil too much, but one of the unlockable endings toward the end is a little reminiscent of Doki Doki Literature Club of all things, while the rest of the game is honestly just moving from heartfelt to really making you think about the world around you and reality in and of itself. It's a lot deeper than it seems on the surface. I would actually like to talk about it further in a future video should the opportunity arise. If it sounds like something you'd be interested in, please, check it out. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and move into some sequels. We'll start with the one we know the least about at this point, Bayonetta 3. I was a huge fan of the original game on the PS3 when I got it in about 2012, and I have been a huge fan of the second game on Switch, as well as all the additional content that was added when Nintendo not necessarily acquired the rights, but essentially took over the franchise in a sense. I do look forward to the third part, as this series has shown a great track record of quality, but as of this moment, we have not heard anything since its initial announcement a few years ago. While I am hopeful, there is not a lot I can say about the title as of this moment, other than the fact it is supposed to be out, as of now, sometime in 2020. But on the subject of threes, we also have No More Heroes 3 coming out this year, and unlike Bayonetta, we have a lot more info to go on at this moment. We've had some recent gameplay shown, we've had an update to Travis's look, both in the opening of the game, and mild tweaks to his overall design, and the gameplay looks like it's going to be more of the same insane otaku-fueled wrestling move back, just hack and slash action schlock that this series has become so well known for. I loved the first two games on the Wii, even despite some clunk here and there, and the fact of the matter is there is just almost no other game with this particular level and type of style, and I have waited a very long time for a true sequel to come out following No More Heroes 2. And while I didn't hate Travis Strikes Back, it wasn't the true sequel that a lot of us have been waiting for, and I think that can be understood across the board. I would consider this game one of the dark horse candidates on the Switch to look out for this year. So far, most of the games in this list have been very colorful or very fun or just generally over the top in one fashion or another. So I think we should go ahead and look into an entry that is a little more, I wouldn't say grounded in reality, but a little darker, a little grittier. So let's go ahead and look at Dying Light 2. I played the original game on PS4 roughly around the time it came out, and I had an amazing time with this game. The day mechanics make it very interesting in what you can do with all the people around you, with factions, but the fact of the matter is, the night is where I feel the gameplay in the original really shined. The multitude of types of zombies that you can fight, or will even potentially just constantly come after you, the super zombies in particular, were so terrifying the first time I ran into them, even though they did become a bit of a joke when you learned how to play around their AI. But the new game is looking to actually expand upon the base of the original game and its DLC. As it stands, this looks to be almost a choose-your-own-adventure style of game based on the amount of choices you will make in this game and how they will directly affect the world you play in. Picking factions, making choices, kill this person, don't kill this person, give water to the people, steal water from the people. It looks like it's going to be amazing purely on the day gameplay, but I am looking forward to seeing how they will have tweaked the gameplay during the night sections, and honestly, I am very, very hyped for this game when it finally comes out. I have waited a long time to hear of an official sequel for this game, and I cannot say that based on the trailer so far that I am disappointed. Before we move on to the remasters and remakes of the list, I have saved these two spots in particular for two games that I, in particular, are very, very excited for and have waited a long time to actually hear some info about. The first of which is Digimon Survive. Out of all the fandoms I've been a part of in my life, I would say one of the biggest, if not the biggest, is probably the Digimon franchise. I have been watching the series and playing the game since I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and I've pretty much stuck with it my entire life. A few of the games in the series are literally some of my favorite to this day, like Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Digimon World 3. While this series is no stranger to switching up gameplay, as it's had multiple series within it that have consisted of RPGs, fighting games, even a kart racer, though admittedly a pretty subpar kart racer. Some of the earliest games in the franchise were the Anode and Cathode Tamer games on the Bandai WonderSwan that was never released in America, And these, as some of the earliest games, were actually grid-based strategy RPGs, not too dissimilar to something along the lines of Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. As such, I am actually very excited for Digimon Survive, as it's going to combine some visual novel elements with the classic grid-based strategy RPG game mechanics that this series was essentially founded on outside of the monster raising mechanics. While they had some issues, I did deeply enjoy playing the Anode and Cathode Tamer games, and I am looking forward to seeing how they've expanded on those and potentially taken some notes from Fire Emblem based on the Survive title, potentially leading to some permadeath situations with characters. While we only know the basis parts of the story thus far, this looks to potentially be one of the most deeply thought and most interesting stories to come out this year in gaming, and I cannot wait to play it when it finally comes out. As for the other game, I am looking forward to finally being able to see more about Tales of Arise by Bandai Namco. While I'm not a more classic fan of the Tales series, I have been hooked ever since playing Tales of Zestiria and Tales of Berseria on PS4, and quite frankly, I am now a massive fan of this series. It does appear that Tales of Arise will be done in a newer looking engine than a lot of the previous games on PS4, and keeping that in mind, it actually looks very similar to something more along the lines of the newer Dragon Quest games or possibly even Trials of Mana. And I don't hate this change. The classic designs of the Tales series look really good in this more modern, slightly newer looking engine, and I think it actually lends itself to the art style of the series quite well. I expect the gameplay to be the classic action RPG hack and slash combo mania style that we've grown to love in the Tales series, and I'm sure the witty and interesting dialogue trees you can have in the game will help build up and produce some of the year's best characters in gaming. So now that we've discussed some of my picks for the new year, let's look into some of the remasters and remakes that will follow. And let's start with the biggest of them all, the Final Fantasy VII Remake. What can I say that the internet has not already beat me to about this game? It looks gorgeous. The new gameplay style is very interesting, and quite frankly, the voice acting and quality of life changes they've done to produce this remake are just astounding. While the previously leaked demo and other pieces of information that have come to light have caused some concerns in the fanbase about some of the changes done in this remake, I would say that overall it's still looking to be an amazing new entry on the PS4. My biggest concern is that having been announced in 2015 and not being released until 5 years later, we may have a slight Duke Nukem Forever situation in which this game cannot possibly live up to its own hype. But, as always, only time will tell. Final Fantasy VII is a juggernaut, a classic of the gaming industry, and honestly, I'm probably going to enjoy it one way or the other, despite the changes. In short, this is probably one of the most hyped games of the year, and it's not difficult to see why. From one classic to another, let's move on to Trials of Mana. This is a remake of Seiken Densetsu 3, or what many people in the West for a long time consider to be Secret of Mana 2. While it was never officially released on the SNES in North America, we did just recently get a release of it on the Switch eShop, in a collection with Final Fantasy Adventure and Secret of Mana, the original Seiken Densetsu 1 and 2. The remake looks to be a fun and potentially challenging JRPG that'll be great for fans of the original series, as well as new fans who have never played Secret of Mana or Final Fantasy Adventure. The graphics are colorful and bouncy, the gameplay looks frenetic and fun, and it looks like it's going to have some very interesting characters as many of these other JRPGs coming out this year. This is definitely one for fans of classic JRPGs. And let's keep that goodness rolling with a few more JRPGs, starting with Persona 5 Royal. Many people were expecting this enhanced version to be coming to the Switch thanks to Joker's inclusion in Smash Ultimate. However, it would appear that it's only going to be arriving on PlayStation 4. While Switch players will only be getting a Dynasty Warriors style spin-off game known as Persona 5 Scramble. While this is a disappointment for players on Switch, it is still an amazing game, and this enhanced port is definitely worth looking into if you have a PS4. With new additional content and new characters, this is the ideal way to play Persona 5. What's the best way to make a good game better? Add more of it! Next up we have Tokyo Mirage Sessions Encore, which is an odd spin-off that combines elements of both the Persona series and Fire Emblem. But probably the biggest thing that draws me to this game, and it is quite biased, is the fact that the aesthetics of this game are pretty much point for point exactly the same as Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Digimon Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory. These are some great games, and this game looks to be working in the same vein as them, with the same art style and direction. I'd initially held off on getting this game on Wii U simply because I was convinced it would get a port at one point down the line to the Switch. Thus, I'm very glad that I waited. I've heard many great things about this game, and I do look forward to playing it once it's released. Rounding out this JRPG trifecta is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I never played the original either on Wii or on 3DS, but I did see a lot of good things about it, and very similar to Joker, the biggest connection I have with it is the Smash Bros. Series, as Shulk was added to Smash Wii U and 3DS, and subsequently made it to Smash Ultimate. His playstyle is so varied and interesting that I really want to see how it actually functions in his own game. He seems like a likable enough character, and I have heard some minor spoilers about the story that make me very interested in seeing and how everything unfolds. This is clearly a classic game from the Wii era, and quite frankly, it's about time it got the love it deserved, without costing $90, lest we forget that was a problem with the Wii version for a long time. Regardless, I do look forward to the release of the Definitive Edition, and I would love to get my hands on it. Next up, we have a collection of 3 games in a single series, the Yakuza collection of Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, fully remastered for the PS4. I am a massive fan of the Yakuza series ever since 0 was released. I have gone through the entirety of 0, Kiwami 1, and Kiwami 2. I had 3 and 4 for a long time, but when I found out that this remastered version was coming out, I traded them in purely to get credit for the remastered collection. I'm incredibly excited because we never actually got a physical release of Yakuza 5 in the US, and it is considered to be one of the best entries in the franchise. With this, I feel like fans will finally be able to fully play through and appreciate the series from start to finish, going through the entirety of Kiryu's story. This is an amazing series both for beat-em-up gameplay, side missions, interesting stories and characters, and just generally good story writing. Plus, pretty much every game comes with mini-games that involve playing other Sega mini-games or arcade games that already exist, so that's a bit of extra value per each game. Yakuza is one of the best franchises that Sega has under its belt, and if you haven't played it yet, you absolutely should. At the very least, they're treating this series a lot better than they have Sonic over the past few years. Lastly, I want to mention one of the remakes that I am the most excited and hyped about from this entire video, and that is, bar none, the Panzer Dragoon remake for Nintendo Switch. And I will tell you why. I am a massive Sega Saturn fan. I understand why it failed, and I can't argue that it failed horribly in the US in its own time. But the Saturn had so many interesting and unique games exclusive to its platform, and so few of those will ever actually see the light of day again on a newer console or on PC. This is one of those rare occasions where we'll actually get a chance to play an old Sega Saturn game with updated graphics, updated gameplay, and actually be able to show it to a new generation. This is one of my all-time favorite classic games, and you hear so little about it. It was really shocking when I saw the E3 announcement this past year. I remember hearing that a studio was working on a remake, but I thought it was a fan project. I didn't realize it wasn't just real, but was also going to be on the Switch. Portable HD Panzer Dragoon is a dream I never thought I'd actually be able to see in my lifetime, and I am so happy that it's actually happening. I am sad that there's been very little information since the announcement, but this is one of the things in life I am more than happy to wait as long as it takes, so long as we see the final product. Additionally, we've also gotten information that Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei will also be remade some point in the future. If this keeps up, we may even get a remake of Panzer Dragoon Saga, one of the rarest, most expensive, and well-reviewed games of the Sega Saturn. Keep your fingers crossed. I know I am. And that's my hype for 2020 in a nutshell. I was going to talk about The Wolf Among Us 2, but sadly current news says that it will likely not be out until 2021 at the earliest. So more than likely I'll make a video about that as well as the original Wolf Among Us some point next year. Did you guys enjoy the video? Are there any other games you're excited about coming in the new year? Please, leave a comment down below and tell me about them. In the meantime, I hope y'all have a fantastic 2020, stay safe out there, and take care.